Hey, it's 6 a.m. here in Vancouver, so you have to give me a little credit to wake up, right, Bob?
You certainly do. You're certainly an early bird today.
So we're going to go through this fairly quickly. I really wanted to set up, I'll just say some concepts and thoughts for you as you think about yourself and people going forward. And we're going to be mostly talking about this book today, but there's lots of other concepts that we're going to cover as well as part of this process. So let's just kind of get right into it. Just my background, I'm the president of Consulting Resource Group. This is our 41st year as a company. I also have a podcast. If you want to get some more stuff after this, there's about 200 and some episodes on Secrets of Success, which is on iTunes and many other platforms out there. And then Bob was mentioning about my background. This is my 32nd year in here. I've done 3,000 paid presentation, and I'm the co-author of all of these assessments here that are the core business or the core offering the Consulting Resource Group has. And Bob, you took the time to come over and hang out with us and go through our 3-day certification to learn about all of these. So we're just going to look at one of them, but just get a sense of that. Now, some of you have seen this survey before, and that was Gallup's survey of 142 countries of what percentage of the global workforce are engaged. Now, Bob, do you remember what the answer is to this? Since you took this 6 years ago, you should remember one of the 600 slides that we had.
Oh, 600 slides. No, I don't remember the actual number, but my guess is it's fairly low. It'll be like a third.
So it's 13%, actually. So when we think about, why is it that people aren't engaged? It's really a global phenomenon. The highest engagement in work is in Canada and the US. Sorry, I didn't include the UK in this one straight out of the components. But if we even look at your friends next door in the Netherlands, it was just 9%. So when we consider, is there an opportunity to improve? Obviously there is. Now, many years ago, I had an individual that was speaking at a conference I was speaking at, and there was a survey done in the UK. And the question they asked was, what percentage of individuals who are starting a job today, so this is their very first day at the job, are already looking for another job? So Bob, do you remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that. That's a shock.
Yeah, it was 33%. So when we think about people being engaged, a lot of times people are taking positions, roles, jobs, responsibilities, really as an interim step to going to where they want to go. And in many cases, they don't even know where they want to go as part of it. So the reality is in the world, less than 10% of the population really are on purpose, doing what they want to do. Hey, and Bob and I both do what we love doing. Now, not every day is perfect. There's some days where you say, hey, I need a break, and that's fine. But is the majority of what I'm doing fulfilling for me? So what's your purpose? That's to live your purpose. And then I'm not here to tell you what that would be. Maybe you just love sports, you like hanging out with that. This is where I used to volunteer at a school with our kids when they were growing up, or maybe it's hanging out in the beach in Spain somewhere. Here's my family in the waterfront in Vancouver. My daughter in the background there gets married in 2 weeks. Bob, can you believe it? I said, that's not even right, right?
No,
2 weeks.
That's not right. That's not
now,
right.
The reason I have this slide here is for us to be thinking about, time's not on our side. So my encouragement is if there's any ideas, concepts that you get today, that you act on them sooner than later, because really, if you wait a year to do it or wait 6 months, there's no benefit to you. It's sort of like that workout program where you consider working out, but then you don't do anything about it. Well, obviously you've not started something. Now, at the very end of this session, we're going to have a free gift, and that is going to be around this book. And I'm going to link, why we're talking about Why Aren't You More Like Me, but also my second book on why that's important. So when we think about engagement, when we think about leadership, when Brendan Bouchard wrote this book, he had 6 habits that were identified in this book. But the number one habit of high performers is clarity. You know that you know who you are. The people around you have the same kind of situation. So if there's a lack of engagement in the people around us, in a lot of cases, they don't even know And so part of the work that we have to do is, can we do the work to get clear? Now, some of you might recall this book, What Color is Your Parachute? It was a international bestseller. The individual in the back of this photograph, Dick Bowles, is the author. He's now passed away a couple of years ago. This image is when we're having lunch together or dinner together in California. And at that time, I think Dick was like 20 or 88 years old. So both of those, Richard and Dick, were in the career development field. And between the two of them, there was almost 80 years of experience. And the question I asked him, I said, why is it that we have so many people that still don't know what they want to do? And in unison, really, they both said, because people haven't been willing to do the work. It takes effort, it takes intentionality, it takes you being deliberate to figure out, why are you here? What are you doing? But that's also true of all the people that are around us. So when we look at this image, I was actually just in conversations with Scott Zimmerman, Dr. Scott, who put this image together, and I use it in just about every presentation that I do. And so this is a metaphor for you that are watching this session. And so when you look at the square wheels, what do they represent as a metaphor for life? And most of the times when I do my seminars or sessions, the answers might be, Bob, what? Like difficulty, old way of doing things. And yeah. I don't know, Bob, have you ever been in an organization where people hug their square wheels?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you've got something, you're not going to let it go. The fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. I'm comfortable. It's my problem. I like it.
Exactly. And so we ask the question, what do the people in the back of the wagon see? And if you look closely at the image, where are their eyes? Their eyes are down at their feet or at the back of the wagon. And then we ask the question, who's the person in the front? Is that the leader? And what is the leader thinking? He's saying, is there anybody pushing? What's going on? What's happening? Now, lots of times in life, we have this situation, and this is not really to judge your intelligence. It's really to get us to think this morning or this afternoon, wherever you might be, is what do the round wheels represent? Well, in a lot of cases, it's opportunity, new ways of doing things. And so I'm going to ask you the question, have you ever known somebody where the answer to their problem, their dilemma, their challenge is obvious, but they don't get it? And so how far away are the round wheels? Well, the round wheels are right there. And so lots of times when we're looking about change or improvement or new leadership or just working with others, the solution to the issues are right there, but people don't see them. Now, lots of times we can look to the people at the back of the wagon and we say, hey, listen, idiot, your round wheels are right there. The solution to your problem is right in front of your eyes. However, is it our job to put other people's round wheels on? So first of all, that's not our job. Our job is to help them to see the round wheels. Whose job is it to put the round wheels on? Well, it's yours for you, but for the people around you, you can't motivate them. That is something that's internal to them. So all we can do is help them to see and help them put it on. So it's my job really to educate them, to help to show them, as we're hopefully going to do today, on what are some possibilities on how I can be better or you can be better. Now, here's what most people do, is let's just take whatever we're doing and let's do it harder. If you have really good eyes and you look at the person driving the cat, what's in his back? Well, that's arrows. So a lot of times we hug our square wheels, and then as a result of that, we create frustration. So my encouragement is that as we think about some of the concepts today, what are some round wheels for you? And Bob and I can't put them on. Only you can put them on for yourself as part of that process. So we were talking about why aren't you more like me and working with others in leadership. One of the concepts we use, and it's in my book, Why Aren't You More Like Me, is really talking about credibility. And of course, nowadays in politics and all the things that are going on there, it is a big concept, but it also is a big gap. So when we think about credibility, and I want you to kind of reflect on these 4 questions, what is credibility as a concept? What is it? Who has it? Who doesn't have it? And then why should we care about credibility as a concept? Why even bother with it? Now, Bob, you went through this when you came over to us and did our, 3-day certification, and Pierre, who's on here, has also been out, and we're hanging out together. So welcome, Pierre. It's good to have you on the presentation as well. So Bob, when you ask your clients and others or leaders, what do you think the answer that they have around this concept of what is credibility? What do you think some people really come up with?
It's around trust. It's around expertise. It's around knowledge. It's around experience. But that personal quality is someone they feel they can intuitively trust.
Mm. And, lots of times when we do the sessions, we say, who has credibility? Well, usually it's like a personal friend. Maybe it's a company that you've been dealing with. And then when we get to number 3, we said, who lacks credibility? It's interesting because politicians, no matter where you are from around the world, always get on the list for number 3. So Bob, we talked about this before. Why is it that politicians always get on this who lacks credibility? What is the behavior that they do that consistently gets them in that space?
Well, I sometimes like to blame the media people at the same time, but the way you answer questions and the way you avoid answering questions, the way you have to change your opinion, if you're not steady Eddie, if you're not someone who sticks to his beliefs all the time, then we just don't know where people stand.
Exactly. And so part of this is the reason that they're there. And, most people would say this is that a lot of times what they say and what they do is 2 different things. And so if we're leaders, if we're leading other people, if that applies to politicians, then that applies to us. Is what you're saying and is what you're doing congruent? Does it fit? Does it work? Now, the last one is, so what? Why should we care about credibility? So the answer to that, many people talk about, without credibility, I'm not really going to get engagement. So let's just go through some of the answers. So why, credibility is foundational for everything. If I'm a parent and working with a child, then if there's not credibility between the 2 of them, you're not going to trust each other. Or if it's in leadership relationships, or if your business in the marketplace, what is your credibility as far as the work that you do in your, I want to use this word here in this definition, is credibility is your reputation. And so reputation is behavior in motion. It's both what you do and what you don't do. And for the qualities of many of the qualities that you talked about, Bob, those become very, very important. Honest, compassionate. But one of the words that's in that list is competent. Some of us maybe over our lifetime have worked for really, really nice idiots. And I say that with endearment, meaning nice people, but they don't know what they're doing. So if you are a leader and you're a nice person, but you don't know what you're doing, then you're not going to have credibility with the people around you. The other thing is credibility doesn't mean that I need to even agree with you or like you. In today's cancel culture, a lot of times people say, well, listen, if I disagree with you, you can't have credibility. Well, that's not necessarily true if you actually think about, I just disagree with you, and people are allowed to have different opinions. So credibility is the level of respect people will give you. It's trustworthy, how much reliable people think you are. But here's actually one of the interesting things when we talked about, why aren't you more like me, is where does credibility exist? Now, there's an exception to this, and that is in the minds of the other people. So Bob, you and I might have where we say, hey, this person is really credible to me. You think they're credible and I don't, because my experience with that person is different. Mm-hmm. And I also have my own, what people call implicit bias. So we always come to the table into relationships, into interactions, where we bring our bias about behavior we see as appropriate. So if I have credibility with you, all of these things are possible. Believe what you believe, communicate. If I'm a leader and people don't trust you, or you don't have credibility as a leader, what's the likelihood you're going to find or hear the truth from the people around you? Anything going on, Ken, that I should hear about or know about, as the leader or supervisor of this division? Oh no, everything's fine. But in my head, there are some concerns that I have. So as your trust goes up, then obviously my willingness to share is going to go up as well. So here's the definition that we have, is that credibility increases or decreases based on behavior seen as appropriate by the other person. Now, here's the slide that I just want to take a moment to really think about, is that every single person that is on this webinar or session or Zoom call, we want to call it, every single one, you have a level of credibility with every single person you know, if you like it or not. It's the price you pay of showing up. And what the challenge is many people in leadership don't even know that they have low credibility, or that nobody likes them, or nobody wants to listen to them. So everybody has low, medium, and high. It's the price you pay of showing up. Your business, if you have a business of some sort, you have credibility in the marketplace. And so all of us have this level of credibility. And so sometimes when we think about leadership, our credibility has been eroded because of we call the sin of omission, meaning the things that we haven't done. So you have somebody that is not following policies, really toxic, really drains everybody else, but you don't do anything about it. Now your credibility is eroded with everybody else around you because you didn't deal with the toxic person. You know, we've all had that or had that situation. Now, here's the other side. When we think about credibility and us being intentional with our behaviors and being good leaders, I want to have one caveat in this whole thing, and that is, many, many years ago, Scott Peck wrote the book, The Road Less Traveled. And one of the things that he talked about in the book is that, is it possible to have a high level of credibility with everybody you meet? And the reality is, no, you're not. So what Scott was talking about in his book is that there's a thing called character disorder. So I don't know if you've ever met somebody, and I don't know, Bob, if you've ever met somebody where they blame everybody else for everything that's going on. I know, have you ever met somebody like that?
Oh, yes, a couple of times.
And so if you have people that are on your team or individuals you're dealing with, if people don't take personal responsibility for their contribution to an event or a situation, then the reality is, because their mindset is external, meaning all the things out there is what's caused their situation, then there are some people, no matter what you do, you're never going to have high credibility with them. So just let that go. And that's character disorder. And that's why it's so difficult to treat, because they don't take any responsibility for their mindset, their responses, their who they are, or their contribution to it, because they don't believe that they're the ones that are causing it. And of course, you know, with neurosis, my wife worked at a university for a decade with students, and in North America, 10% of students, college students, were, you know, the me culture or the neurotics. So those are difficult to teach. Now, there's a sidebar to this credibility, and this is important with leadership as well. And that is that we also have this level of credibility with self. So all of us have credibility with each other if we know each other, if we interact with each other, even if it's for a short few minutes, you are already, you know, putting together some kind of mindset of what you think about that person. You are judging that person, even though we say we don't want to, we do, but our organizations do. But the other one, which is very, very important in the leadership space, is my credibility with self. How do I feel about myself and all the things that are going on with that? So we've met those individuals where, you know, it's not about arrogance, it's really about confidence. And this comes across in the leadership space as well, where I discount my own ability. I discount my own contribution. So I says, Ken, that was a good job. And I might say, oh, that was nothing. And really, rather than just saying to Bob, thank you, Bob, for saying that, I don't need to be puffed up about it. I don't need to be arrogant about it. I'm just simply receiving a compliment. And so sometimes people really discount their own abilities. Now, one of my colleagues, and I say that lightly, Jim Kouzes, he's actually endorsed the book, Why Aren't You More Like Me, many years ago. He wrote the book Credibility. And so I slipped this slide in for you to say, okay, they did research, he and Barry did research on what were the characteristics and qualities to have credibility in the workplace. And what I have on the screen are the top 4. These are non-negotiable. And so there are 20 or so that are in the book that he lists with the research that he has there. But if you're going to have a workplace, an environment where people are going to trust one another. So first, number 1 is honesty. I mean, be real, you know, no blowing smoke or just kind of pretending. They just want to hear the truth from you. Number 2 is competence. Do you know what you're doing? You know, and that's the other one is do you have people that know what they're doing around the people that are there if you're a leader of leaders? And then forward looking, do you know where you're going? And then the last one, inspiring. And this is important for today, is am I connected? Have you built a picture, a dream, an articulation of how I am part of where we are going. So Ken, how do you fit into this vision, this contribution of the dream, the vision, the mission that we have here at the organization? And have you done that work with the individuals there? So when we think about, why aren't you more like me? The late Wayne Dwyer wrote this thing, in self-awareness, all things are possible. So when I don't know that I don't know that I don't know, then what's the likelihood I'm going to act on it? Well, it's going to be pretty small. So we are everybody talks about like emotional intelligence, self-awareness, mindfulness. These are sort of key words that are out there in the marketplace today. So when we think about that, is that if I don't know, then I can't do it. So we believe here at CRG is that, first of all, I need to have self-awareness. In self-awareness, then I have the potential to have self-management where I manage self. And then I eventually move into a position of self-mastery where I actually can manage myself. And I always have a choice of what I'm going to do and what I'm going to not going to do. So I'm going to ask the question here for you in a minute. And when we think about personality development, I'm going to show you our model here in a moment. Bob, the answer to this question. Are we nature? Are we nurture? Are we born a certain way, or does our environment shape our attitudes and how we do things? What do you think the answer is?
It would be lovely if it was just one or the other, but it has to be a combination of the two. Without nurturing, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's both. So all of us come to the table with a certain, what we call, I'll give you the definition here in a little bit. We are predetermined. In other words, we are born with certain dispositions. And so those dispositions aren't right or wrong. They are just simply different. And then we also have nurture, where we have the environment. So I'm sharing with you now our full model, which is proprietary to us. But when you think about your performance, when you think about the performance of other people around you, we believe that these factors contribute to a person's capability to engage, to serve, just to be. So, personal style, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, is in, other people call it personality. We call it personal style. And, now that I'm Bob, I'm just pleased to announce that the personal style indicator is the #1 assessment based on personality assessment based on the participants' feedback. So when people complete the personal style indicator compared to any other quote unquote personality tool, it's now #1. So when we think about, I'll come to that here in a moment. So that is one thing that's driving things. Biophysical factors, if you're stressed, if you didn't get sleep, if you're not feeling well, then my ability to engage is going to be affected. And there's lots of people who actually sort of know who they are, but if I didn't get sleep, then maybe I'm grumpy, maybe I'm edgy, maybe I'm not eating, excuse me, correctly. So then my blood sugar is low. So that's going to affect how I'm able to engage. And maybe I haven't taken care of myself. And as a result of that, my energy goes down and is low. And then I just really can't bring my full person. The self-worth levels is that you and I could have the identical personal style, other people call personality, one with high self-worth, one with low self-worth. And so the higher my self-worth, the more that I can stand in myself. The ability to say no is equally important as the ability to say yes, especially as an individual and or as a leader. So that's why a lot of times when people, they'll say yes because they want to feel accepted rather than standing in their own confidence. And as a result of that, all of a sudden, well, Ken, you said yes yesterday. Now you're saying no. What's going on? What's happening? And so it's really my self-worth levels that come into play. In the bottom left-hand corner, we talk about environmental systems. People's backgrounds, where they grew up, the different cultures. If I'm in the West Coast of Canada, where I am in Vancouver, or if I'm with yourself, Bob, and you're in the UK, or Pierre that's in Europe or in Austria or in France, I might have different perspectives in life. And so I bring those expectations to bear into how I interact. When we talk about social teachers, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, is all the sort of expectations of the relationships around you, how your parents treated each other, how people interacted with you, mentors that you had, people that you really looked up to and were modeling their behavior as a kid. They're not talking about, a lot of our belief systems are locked into place by 8, 9, 10 latest 12 years of age. So I already have that. And when we think about on the right-hand side, we talk about emotional anchors. Well, emotional anchors are all the events in your life that really create triggers for you, both positive and negative. And those will be all unique to the people that are there. Now, if you have really good eyes and you look behind sort of that red circle in the center, there's the word spirituality. And what we mean by that is people's belief systems highly influences what they do and what they don't do. And so if you have a certain sort of faith statement or none at all, so somebody said to me in a session, Ken, I believe in nothing. And then I said, well, then that is your belief system, because human beings can't believe in nothing, because nothing is something. And so as part of that, all of these factors contribute to your leadership skills, your capabilities, how you're going to show up. But it also is true for everybody else that you are leading. Now, Bob, I've covered a fair amount of stuff here at the midpoint. Anything that you want to, on behalf of the viewers, want to ask at this point, or do we keep going?
I guess one question I would have is, are the internal factors more important than the external factors, or more impactful, or is it the other way around?
Well, it's a good question, Bob. And here's the reality. We don't know, because it's going to be unique on each of the individuals. I remember being brought into a local university, and there was an individual in the room. And when we got through all of this stuff and we had finished doing the personal style indicator, which is the assessment that comes with Why Aren't You More Like Me book, she was actually in tears. And she was a PhD. She had just arrived from Korea in Canada, and she was now having a professorship at the university that I was doing this work for. And I asked her, I pulled her aside, why the tears? She says, well, my whole life I've been told to be somebody different, because I was a woman in a culture that wasn't really appreciating my gender, especially with somebody with a PhD. So in that case, Bob, the environmental systems were oppressive to her. And so, and other people, I'll give you an example, biophysical factors. In 1987, I was put on antidepressants and put on lithium. And what we found out later on is that I was actually hypoglycemic. It had nothing to do with my quote unquote mental illness. You know, the reality, as a health expert, some people don't know I have a diploma in nutrition genetics, and we do have a wellness assessment. A lot of times people's situations has nothing to do with sort of mental illness. It has to do with biophysical factors. So I think it applies to the person depending on their situation. That's why they're all there. But very, very good question.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when we think about that, so I didn't realize I had done this, but that's fine. Okay. One of the things I am going to recommend this book when we talk about the emotional anchors. Dr. Carolyn Leaf, and I've met her a couple of times, is she's written the book Switch on Your Brain and Who Switched Off Your Brain. And she really debunks a lot of the work out there in the psychological world, is that people say, well, listen, I'm this way, I'm always depressed or whatever. She says, no, you have a choice on how you can actually alter things. So I just going to recommend that book as part of that process. Okay. So all of that creates the whole person. So self-awareness is foundational to your sustainability. If you don't know that you don't know, then how can you possibly actually lead others or be able to be intentional, deliberate with your behaviors? So we believe in playing to your strengths. You know, a lot of people say, well, I need to develop my weaknesses. I think you need to be aware of them. But I'm really not an individual that is ever going to be an auditor in an accounting department, even though I have my MBA. So I want to play to my strengths. I don't want to be developing my weaknesses. Now, one of my, the beauty of being a podcast host is I get all these New York Times bestsellers on my show. And one of the times I met Tasha, and Tasha was on my show not that long ago. And she wrote this book, Insights, which is a New York Times bestseller just last year. And so, Bob, this is new research, and we hadn't covered this when you had come to training. So this is such a powerful process. What percentage of people believe that what they know about themselves, what they believe about themselves, is congruent with how other people view them and opinions of them? So what do you think that number is, Bob?
I'd say that's high. I'd say like 85, something like that.
Well, let's take 10 seconds and you're managing the chat on the other side. So everybody just throw in the chat box. What percentage of people do you believe think they know themselves and their opinion of selves is congruent with the people around them, people that work for them, their family, their friends, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just take a moment, just throw it in the chat and just say, what's the number that you have in there?
God, we got 50, 70, 20, 35, 25, 45, 10%.
Okay.
90%, 20%.
So here it is. So 95% of people believe that they know themselves well, and their opinion of selves, of how they come across and how people view them, is congruent with how people are actually view them. So then what Tasha did is had her students go out and interview the people. So now, what percentage of individuals' self-awareness is aligned with how other people see them? So that means that what I think about myself is congruent with what you think about me, Bob. And so here's the number, and we won't wait for putting it in the chat, but it's only 10%.
Yeah,
So
some people are guessing 5. Some people are
yeah,
guessing 5%, Ken.
Yeah, 85% of people are delusional. In other words, what you think about yourself is not how other people experience you. You know, how could I possibly be an effective leader when I actually am delusional on how I come across? Now, this is not judgment. This is just the reality that what she says in her book, Insights, is that self-awareness is the meta skill for the 21st century. So that is foundational. It's non-negotiable, and all the research is showing that. So let's just go into, when we talk about leaders, you know, what is the top 2 reasons why leaders fail? So let's just look at these 2 reasons to start with. And the first one is a lack of emotional intelligence in their personal skills. So here's the reality. Leaders are always dealing with people. Unless you are cast away in the middle of the island and Tom Hanks and doing nothing, is that all of us are interacting with others, and that is part of the responsibility. Now, number 2 is interesting. As an individual who's done 3,000 presentations with, you know, many Fortune 100 companies, hubris is one of the reasons why leaders fail, is that they are overly self-confident. It's always about them. And it's interesting. I remember doing work for Ford in North America, and the vice president of marketing actually had me come in to do this work with all their regional managers. This is many, many years ago. And Bob, guess who is the only person who didn't do the pre-work? The vice president. And he said, I don't need to do that. And so then what happened, because he didn't do the pre-work, he couldn't participate in the session, and then he left. Well, what did that do to everybody in the rest that was left there? You know, I'm the vice president. I'm too busy to work on myself. So that's really the opposite of that. So let's switch this around and say, okay, if we're to flip to the other side of the coin, what are the top 3 reasons or skills that leaders succeed? So number 1 is high self-awareness. So I know who I am, but self-awareness is not enough. You know, if I know I'm a jerk and I continue to be a jerk, I'm still a jerk. So the other side is emotional mastery, meaning, can I manage self? Can I be in control of self? You know, controlling self is always a choice. You know, when we say, oh, you made me mad, you made me angry. No, that is a choice that you have. And then the third thing is a deep understanding of other people. There's just really no way to avoid this. Let me assure there's lots of other skills that are out there, but these are really the core ones that we want to have for the offering. You know, and there was a study done in Canada. So what percentage of individuals believe that individual or supervisor in their leader is incompetent? So what do you think that number is, Bob?
What percentage of individuals think that would be reasonably high, 70%?
Man, man, look at that. And I didn't even give him the answer, ladies and gentlemen. So the reality is, if I asked, 100 leaders, how many of you think you're incompetent? I suspect I wouldn't get 70% that said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I got the job anyways. So that's part of that process where there's a lot of improvement that can come into play. So in our work, we believe that understanding your personal style, that it is critical. It's more important than anything else that's out there. When TalentSmart did their survey, and TalentSmart's one of our competitors or colleagues, whatever way you want to kind of put it, is that your knowledge of your personal style is more important than anything else, your education, your intelligence, your profession, your job level, because it affects everything that you are doing. And according to them, if you don't know what your personal style is, then only 2% of the people will realize their potential, because it involves all your relationships, what you want to do in job, at work, your roles or responsibilities. You take whoever you are wherever you go. So that's critically important. And when we talk about that, that's personal style. That's one part of you. That's the nature side of it. What's really also staggering to me, Bob, is a lot of people, have companies, they have organizations, and they don't use assessments as part of the hiring process, getting to know people, getting to know others. And what's interesting is and the reason I have this image up here, you would never go to your doctor and then your doctor say, you know what, Ken, I'm just going to guess that your blood pressure is 120/80. If I went to you, Bob, and I just, and I was your doctor and I said, I'm just going to guess, and I think your blood serum levels are this, without us doing any testing, I'm just going to guess. What would you think about me as a doctor?
You're a plonker.
Yeah, exactly. You're a quack. But we do it every day in business with the people who work with us, and even ourselves as leaders. We need to benchmark. Now, here's the reality. Because I take your blood serum levels and your cholesterol is high, I didn't make it high. I just revealed to you what was already true. And that's really what we like to do with our mindset around assessments, is to help you to understand your current condition. What you're going to do with it afterwards is really up to you. So now, Ken, your cholesterol is high. Are you going to change your diet? Are you going to start walking? Or are you going to start adding some things to it? So the personal style indicator is our tool that's based out of the Wired to More Like Me. And then, by the way, Bob, we now have a full e-course that's available with this as well. So here's our definition of personal style. Personal style is your natural predisposition to perceive, approach, and interact with the environment, which includes time, people, tasks, and situations. I remember we did a lot of work in the auto industry, and I had an individual, a service manager, in one of our sessions that we were doing, and he said, you know what, Ken, if it wasn't for people, I'd love my job. I hate people. I said, what are you talking about? You're the service manager. You're in charge of everybody. Well, he was an auto mechanic who had been promoted into managing people. And so a lot of times people get promoted into positions and roles that really are not a fit for them. And so we always think, and I talk about it in the book a little bit, where people believe that being upwardly mobile and being promoted is the right direction for them. And in many cases, that's the last thing they should be doing. And so there are some other individuals who are people-oriented, and now they're in charge of the auditing department, and that's why it's just a mess or a disaster, and none of the systems work. And so every single person on the planet, and our assessment tools now in 12 or 13 different languages, every single person on the planet has a personal style. And so and we have different intensities and levels of that. Now, the next statement could confuse some people, but I just want to be clear about this. We believe your personal style, what other people call personality, is something that does not change throughout your lifetime. And the reason that's important is that I can count on me being me tomorrow, and Bob, you not switching to be Robert, somebody else, or Pierre tomorrow, is that you have this consistency throughout your lifetime. However, my personality, which is the totality of who I am, continues to grow and evolve. Who I am now versus 20 years ago, in my education and all the work and in all the interactions with professionals like yourself, Bob. Hopefully, I've grown and I'm better than I was before because of that. But my personal style has not changed. My natural predispositions, my preferences have stayed consistent. And the reason why that's so important is that if that was not true, then the world would be complete chaos. And so that's part of who I am. Now, the other thing is a lot of times people take personality assessments and they think, well, you should do this job or this career. We don't believe in that, because personal style doesn't measure interests, gifts, and talents. It just measures preferences. And there's all these other things that come into play and background that really we don't measure as part of that process. And so then we mentioned earlier that we want you to play to your strengths, but that's also my job as a leader, is to help understand what are the strengths of the individual. And if I have an individual doing a role or responsibility that's not a fit long-term, then their engagement is not sustainable. we've all been a role and a responsibility that we could probably engage for, a few days or maybe even a few months or maybe even a year. But if the nature of the work and the nature of who I am is not a fit, it doesn't fit together, then I can't sustain that engagement. So do you know what that fit is for you? Do you know the fit for the people around you? Is there a connection on that? Do you have a methodology to be able to put that in place? The other thing when we think about emotional intelligence is that either you're in control of your personal style is in control of you. So this next statement leads in here. Your personal style is not an excuse for your behavior. So even though we teach that you need to play to your strengths, just because I might be direct, impatient, doesn't mean that I can be grumpy and terse with other people around me. It doesn't give me permission of that. And now this is this self-management moving into self-mastery, is that I'm not letting my personal style interfere with the people around me. Now, Bob, I want to check in with you. How much time we have left before we go to Q&A?
Well, it's up to you to a certain extent. We normally stop presenting about 45, 50 minutes. So we're at 43 minutes now.
Okay, so we'll do the 7 minutes and then we'll move into Q&A. I just wanted to kind of confirm with everybody. And then get your questions ready if you're there as far as part of it. Now, one of the things that we have is we have a whole different, this is our model. This is our theory around personhood, about how people show up in the world. And we have a completely different definition of introversion and extroversion. So these are the 4 quadrants that we use: behavioral action, affective, expressive, interpersonal harmony, and cognitive analysis. And we just don't have enough time in today's session to go in depth in this. However, I do want to state this, is that extroversion and introversion in our model, and we believe, and I don't want this to come across arrogant, this really is after doing this for 41 years as a company, has nothing to do with people. People and task is a separate measure. And so extroversion actually is the measurement of how you see the environment. So extroverts see the environment as something to be influenced, to be told what to do. And introverts see the environment where I need to be careful, I need to be cautious. And again, it has nothing to do with the people side of things where I get my energy. And so extroverted individuals see challenges as something to be overcome. They need to engage the environment. They need to tell the environment what to do to even feel alive. If I'm highly introverted, then I'm going to defer to what the environment says to me. So if I see a red light at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday in my town or city, then I'm going to obey it. If I'm highly extroverted, if there's no cars around, I'll probably just go through it because a red light is simply a suggestion to an extrovert. So these things are very, very important. And most of us have different calculations or balances of it. So what we do, in our sessions is we teach people how to use these 3 continuums: introversion, extroversion, verbal and nonverbal, and people and task, to be able to read and to identify and to work with others. And people are constantly telling us how they want to be treated. And so we use this concept called translating. And translating is simply, am I paying attention to the behaviors, the nuances of the individual in front of me? And then am I doing something about that? So do I understand? Remember what one of the top 3 skills of an effective leader was: understanding behaviors of others, understanding people. And so do I really understand them? Do I get them? Do I know that I know? Do I have some kind of model to be able to understand them? So translating is for us to be able to understand the other person, read them. And so we have a methodology where we teach you how to read somebody else in 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes. And it's a very, very powerful process. But that is something if I'm going to be effective as a leader. Now, this next one is interesting. I just want to spend 2 minutes here. And this is in actually the Capilano Suspension Bridge in North Vancouver here in Canada, is the concept of suspending. Now, here's what we mean by this. Suspending is not changing who you are, but moving out of self-centeredness into putting other people first, to temporarily set aside your preferences, what you want from them, to be able to focus on the other person. So if I'm going to lead somebody else, can I suspend enough to be able to listen to them, to understand them? Same thing with a customer, same thing with a personal relationship. Or is it always about you and you're being self-centered? So it's interesting, when we think about people getting what I call hooked, Dr. David Burns did this book, Feeling Good. Now, by the way, if you want to get into therapy, as we do at different times, this is like a 500-page book with a 6-point font. But one of the things that David has in his book is this quote, which is, a lot of people don't like this quote, and that is, no matter how offensive or unfair others might appear to you, they do not, never did, and never will upset you. The bitter truth is that you're the only one that's creating every last ounce of irritation, frustration, or every even outrage. So what this means, Bob, is that I'm never offended unless I let them. I'm not saying that what the person did was okay, but being offended is always, always a choice. And that is crazy because that really, I mean, we talked about road rage. You never have road rage in the UK, right, Bob?
Not personally, but yeah.
No, not personally. So all of a sudden so the fact that the person cut you off, your response to it is what we're talking about here. So can you suspend? So no matter what that person did, then are you getting angry? So, and here's why this is important. You know, Dr. Gottman is in Seattle and did research around couples, but he also did the research as it applies to relationships and communication. Is what he proved in his research is that once I go over 100 beats per minute, non-athletic, I'm no longer rational. You know, we've all gotten hooked and ramped up and upset where we start to say and do things we would never say if I was grounded and centered and being mindful and in charge of self, being self-mastery. So we get all ticked up, and hey, by the way, I teach this because I need this as much as anybody else. We get all ramped up and then we say and do things that are not appropriate. And so part of managing self is I need to suspend in that, you know, being offended, that root word is actually goes into the Greek, is called I've been baited into it. You know, some people know your hot buttons, but if somebody can't get you offended, then they can't take you out and you stay grounded and centered. And that's what Dr. Gottman said. Listen, if I get over 100 beats per minute, non-athletic, then I'm going to be irrational and I'm not going to be able to control myself. So again, suspending is always a choice. And then finally, you know, can I develop my skills enough to shift, to choose behaviors, approaches, and interactions with others that fit them, not me? I'm not changing who I am, but I am, as a leader, adjusting my approach as best as possible to serve you first. What's interesting though, if we talked about credibility in the beginning, where does credibility exist? In the mind of the other person. Is behavior seen as appropriate by who? By them, not me. And so if we just kind of being mindless, doing whatever we want when we want, and we're not paying attention to what the needs of other people are, then as a reality of that, then I'm going to be unaware. I'm not going to be emotionally intelligent. And as a result of that, I'm going to be part of the 70% of people say that supervisors are incompetent. I'd suspect that as we think about the research, that most of that came out of the fact that they don't know how to manage relationships. So I don't have time to kind of go through all of that. Now, one more thing that I mentioned, and I'm just going to take 1 minute to do this, Bob, in that there's another chapter in the book called What Do You Really Value? And this is actually one of my favorite things. When we think about people getting grounded and centered and be able to serve others, my encouragement is that you get clear about what your core values are. I mean, a lot of times the reason that people change their minds is that they don't know that they don't know that they don't know. So all the research shows is that when I know what my core values are, and we say this statement, that then you would make the right decision every time from this point on, is that you make values-based decisions as much as situational. There's just too much stuff going on. So when you know your values, then your stress reduces because you know who you are. Your willpower and your resilience. Everybody's talking about that right now, resilience. When you know that you know who you are, you stand in your own space and your self-control actually increases as a result of knowing who you are. And also the other one is your increased openness is there for you as well, is that you are not, what's the word? When you know who you are and you're standing in that, then getting feedback about, Bob, you know, that wasn't maybe as effective as it could be, then you're okay by that because you're not taking that as personal offense. The other thing is, what makes something valuable? Well, you do. And then a lot of times we have people around us where they say, you know, values congruence erodes your energy. They say their family's important to them, but they never spend any time with them. Well, then if you say you value something, well, I value being on time, but you're always late. Either be on time or get it off the list. because that lack of congruence is eroding your energy and eroding your credibility with all the people around you. Now, Bob, I'm going to skip through this other stuff around the values assessment because I don't have time to kind of get into that. So I just wanted to encourage people, you know, if nothing changed in your life over the next 5 years, would that be okay? And so most people say no. So what that means is that you're going to think about a round wheel. So we covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. And as Bob knows, we do, and Pierre knows, we do a 30-hour certification on all our tools. And so I just gave you like 47 minutes of it. I'm just here to be able to kind of respond, and you could just share anything there. And if you want, we just go from there.
Ken, thank you very much. So let's open the floor up to questions. If you could put the questions in the Q&A rather than in the chat, that would be very much appreciated. Ken, we've had one question come in on the chat already, which is, how do I find out my level of credibility with my team?
The easiest way is to ask them. And so a lot of times you want, I'm just going to stop sharing, I think. How do I stop sharing the screen? I wonder. Oh, over here. Sorry. Got it.
You got it.
I'll just push that. Okay. So part of that is that a lot of times we just don't stop to create a safe space to ask. And I've had the benefit of hanging out with Marshall Goldsmith, which is, you know, one of the top coaches in the world. And I was at an invite-only event in New York with him a couple of years ago. Is his coaching for CEOs is around getting feedback. The one, if you don't think that you're going to get the truth from the people around you if you ask directly, then get somebody else or a coach to do it. Hire Bob to interview people to or others to interview them to say, what does Ken do well? What does he not do well? How do you feel about that? So if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, then check in and get somebody else to do it for you. You have to ask. There's no way to kind of guess on this thing.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Another question that's come in is, I'm fascinated by your description of introvert versus extrovert. Could you tell us a bit more about how that relates to task rather than people?
Well, what happened is that introversion and extroversion is this, it's actually biophysical. It's based on the reticular activating system. So people who are extroverted actually have fewer nerve fibers in the base of their brain, in their neck. And as a result of that, stimuli externally doesn't affect them as much. And that's why they're not intimidated by the environment. People and task are separate measures. You know, Kersey and Blanchard proved that 55 years ago in their model where we talked about relationship and task. So there are some people that are more task-oriented. There's some people that are more people-oriented. We think it does a disservice by trying to link people to introversion and extroversion. And so we did our research and went through and was really pulling on other stuff. The introversion, extroversion on people really came from Carl Jung's work that led to Myers-Briggs, which was abnormal psychology. So introversion, extroversion, and by the way, when we get into, if somebody takes our tool, then we actually measure it. People have different intensities. Some other tools say you're either an introvert or an extrovert. Well, there's some people that are actually quite balanced. Some people that are very people-oriented. There's some people that are very task-oriented. And then there's some of us, I'm actually balanced between the two. I'm equally people as I am task. So hopefully that helps in that knowledge. And we cover that in chapter 6 in the book.
Okay, thanks, Ken. I have another question. When you know a team is not performing due to the leader not listening, how do you approach the leader when the leader believes they have a great understanding of their self-awareness?
Well, this goes back to what was Tash's research? 95% of people believe that they know themselves. This goes back where we have to be open with the feedback to the individual on if they're not willing to listen, if they're not willing to change or to adjust, then that really becomes part of your decision making, doesn't it? You have 3 choices with individuals who are not performing, leader or not. You accept the behavior, you change the behavior, or you change the person. There's no other choices. So part of this is, and I hear what you're saying, frustration with the individual who is not willing to be able to take their own feedback. Part of that is breaking through that hubris. Remember, that was number 2 on the why leaders fail, is the hubris is, I don't need these things. And some people, it's interesting, being vulnerable and hearing that you're not doing a good job, it hurts. I mean, it really does, no matter who you are. So how I do it, and so hopefully you can set up an environment that it's not working, and that they can get the real true feedback. And if they're not willing to change, then you'll have to make some choices about that. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, sometimes it's tough love, either way. Another question.
By the way, before people leave, Bob, I have a gift for everybody at the very end that I'll share with the slide deck when I get there. I'll tell them about what that is.
Okay, well, maybe we'll make Scott's question the last one, so you can say that then. So Scott says, great presentation, Ken. I wish we had more time. You mentioned that self-awareness is the meta skill of the 21st century. How much time should I be dedicating to honing this skill? And are there any good plans out there to follow?
Well, Tasha's book on insights is very, very good. And of course, the work that we're talking about here that we do around Why Aren't You More Like Me? I think this is just an ongoing. I don't know if there's a number, but it's a very good question on that, is that we just want to constantly be checking in. Now, it's not easy. I don't like it either. I mean, even though I teach this stuff, is one of the things that Marshall talks about in his stakeholder feedback is that you make checking in with people about how you're doing a regular course of your process, what you do. So you are checking. So, Bob, we were talking about, I was going to be a better listener. And so as part of that coaching process, I go back to you maybe, once or twice a month, and it's scheduled. I said, Bob, we talked about me listening better. How am I doing? Is that you make this checking in as part of this development. And so when we think about, how much work is it? Well, we're always doing it. We're always trying to improve. And so I don't know if there's a number as much as an intentionality of, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make being self-aware as much as possible, bring it into sort of my mindset and what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I recently read again the Radical Candor, which talks about building that back into the business. So you're regularly checking in. Scott says, thank you. He likes the checking in idea. Ken, you mentioned a special offer for everybody who's still with us.
Yeah, now I'm not sure. You can't see the screen now, can you?
Not at the moment.
Okay, let me just see if I can. I'm just going to bring that back up. So I have my book, The Quest for Purpose. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to give you a free e-copy of the book. So if you go to my speaker site, kenkeis.com/be-more-effective. I don't know where I got that from, Bob. Can you see that now? Are you seeing that screen?
No, don't worry.
Hang on. Here we
go.
There
it is. Look at that.
Okay, so if you go to that, it's a hidden URL. We'll just have it active for a day or so, or maybe a week. And then you can go and you can get a free download. Because one of the things is, I think as a leader is that when we know who we are, is sometimes, saying no is more important than saying yes. And then once you know who you are, then that really helps you to be a better leader. So kenkeis.com/be-more-effective.
I really appreciate that, Ken. Thank you so much. Next week, we have Helen Lawrence talking about recruitment and how to make recruitment work and even better and more effective and produce great results in this difficult time. Ken, you've been a superstar. It's been amazing to work with you again. Hopefully we can persuade you to get up early again at some point in the future.
That's right. Not earlier, though. That's for sure. Yeah, I think you're ready in the household said, what's going on? What's happening?
All right.
Yeah, 6 a.m.
Bye, everybody. Thanks very much. Have a great week. Love you lots. See you soon.